Hey folks, Craig Reed here from CX Pulp. Once again, we're week 3 of the $40 pull list for the month of March. We have a ton of books to get through this week, so we're not going to screw around. Let's get right into it. Okay, our first issue this week is Read Gunther number 9. This is from Image Comics. You may remember that it was due out last week, but unfortunately my shop didn't get it in. Looks like a lot of them did. However, there was some kind of shipping problem with Diamond and some of the stores didn't get them. So this one was a week late, but it certainly wasn't Image's fault, and it definitely wasn't the fault of the Houghtons. The book was done on time. This one is the first part of a two-part story called Fiends Forever. Read Gunther usually does single-shot stories, but in this case I can see why they went with a two-parter. This is a fairly important story for one character in particular, namely Sterling, the bear. You know, there's always been something a little out of the ordinary about him, and now we're starting to see that, you know, there's a reason for that. I'm really enjoying this, as always. We're definitely going to keep getting this. You know, it seems like we've been reading Read Gunther forever, but this is only issue 9. There were a couple months that didn't come out, but, you know, new material takes time, and I don't know if this was always intended to be a long-term ongoing. Anyway, it continues to be a really good comic for all ages, adults and kids alike. It's a solid Western story. It reads a little cheesy for an adult book, but, you know, that aside, all the other elements are strong, and we're going to continue to keep this on the list, and I hope you have a chance to check it out. To save a little bit of time, I'm going to cover the next two books at the same time. We have Batman and Nightwing number 7, both from DC Comics. Both came out on time. Just a quick tip, if you get both of these issues and you haven't read them yet, read Nightwing first. I made the mistake of reading Batman first, and as it turns out, the two endings are identical. They come together. Looks like Nightwing's issues with the Book of Names had a lot to do with what's going on with Batman in the Court of Owls. It made sense. I had a light go off in my head. Unfortunately, that happened in the wrong issue, and you know, that was the highlight of reading Batman number 7. Unfortunately, I really didn't like the rest of the story at all. We have old school, whiny, you know, secretive Batman, and I was really hoping that they were starting to move past that in the new DCU, but, you know, we got more of it. Granted, Batman just got his butt handed to him, and he almost died, and now he's having to deal with that. But to revert back into that shell instead of giving us something new, going to Dick instead of, you know, figuring the problem out the way he did, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not liking this Batman. I'm definitely not liking the tone in this story lately. The artsiness is still there. It's not quite as exaggerated as it was, but he seems to spend more time focusing on metaphorical owls eating bats and all this stuff instead of telling us a good story. The bulk of the good story was the final confrontation with Dick Grayson, which was almost exactly replicated in Nightwing number 7, and the art was better too. Granted, the art we're getting in Batman is more artistic, it's very precise, it's highly skilled, but it suffers from that dark palette where everything is really difficult to make out, and, you know, there's not the story there to back up the art. Nightwing, on the other hand, the figures aren't quite as precise, but they're good. You know, I like the look of it. I like the coloring. They do a much better job coloring the darkness than what we're getting in Batman. You know, just to wrap things up, Nightwing's solid. Batman, if it keeps going down this path, it's definitely going to get dropped. The only thing that's saving it this month is the fact that it's tied in with Nightwing. And, you know, if it splits off in issue number 8, I'm not going to have a problem dropping this. So, Nightwing, awesome. Batman, it's circling the drain really fast. Now we're on to Generation Hope number 17 from Marvel Comics. It is on time. This is the last issue of the series. It's kind of a bittersweet ending. I wasn't a real fan of this series when it first started up, but we had a writer change. Things got really strong. All the way through this issue, we finally had that big climax when Zero made his move and finally attacked Hope in retribution for all the things that she did wrong. And then we got a sitcom ending. I don't understand how they thought that it was an acceptable way to end this issue where all the other members of the team are happy-go-lucky, forgive Hope, and all she has to do is apologize and promise to do better, and everybody's best friends again. I get that these people are teenagers, but teenagers have a strong sense of individuality, and to have somebody manipulate them so strongly, to have all of them just forget it and smile at the end like it's no big deal, no good. This issue really needed to have Hope come out. Maybe we needed a flash of the Phoenix. Maybe we needed something more to lead us into Avengers vs. X-Men. We didn't get that. We got the sitcom ending. There was a little bit of an ominous thing with a picture being shown, but nothing character concrete. Everything's just happy. So overall, the series gets a thumbs up. It was a great concept. Unfortunately, they never really did what they should have done with it, and this ended up being another vehicle leading into another event. So I feel like it was kind of a waste of time reading this series for this year and a half. We'd seen be getting a lot of that when we were on the full court press with the mega events from the publishers, and unfortunately I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. So no reason to check this one out if you're reading Avengers vs. X-Men coming up in a couple of weeks. It doesn't pertain at all, and that's a real disappointment. Okay, next up is Blue Beetle number 7 from DC Comics. This one was out on time this week. Jamie has left El Paso, if you'll recall, after his fight with Paco, and he is not only trying to hide so that he doesn't cause his family and friends any more trouble, he's also kind of been outed as a supervillain thanks to some video that was taken of his fight with Paco, particularly him smacking Brenda to make Paco's Scarab unit think that the Scarab was back in control. There seems to be some fertile ground for some stories here. Blue Beetle is introduced to 2 potential threats in New York. One of them kind of mysterious. You think maybe it's connected to the Green Lantern from the way that the Scarab is reacting, but the thing eats cats, and I'm not sure that that really fits the Green Lantern profile. The other one is a kid named Short Timer who is robbing some jewelry stores that Jamie has to deal with, and I'm not sure that that guy's going to be around much longer based on the appearance at the end of the issue, but we do see that the guy who provided him with the gear that made him intangible, named Stopwatch, I have a feeling that this is going to be a recurring villain for Jamie, and so far so good. Kind of curious to see where they take it, and it looks like that's where we're going to get in issue number 8. So I have a feeling that Jamie's going to be in New York for a little bit of time. It's probably a good thing for his character, help him get out of that old mold back in El Paso, and maybe we'll get some more focus on him confronting his Scarab and trying to regain control over that. So overall, I'm still enjoying this series, and I look forward to checking it out next month. On to John Carter, The Gods of Mars, issue number 1 of 5. This came out from Marvel Comics on time this week. Some of you may be wondering what I thought about the John Carter movie that was recently released in theaters. I'm not going to get into that here. If you're curious, go ahead and head over to cxpulp.com and read the short piece I wrote on the movie. Not going to let that enhance or tarnish my thoughts about this series. It is an adaptation of the second book by Edgar Rice Burroughs. We have a new writer, or a new adapter this time. We have Sam Humphries writing this, and overall it's not too bad. I mean, the language is updated, and I think that that's probably okay for a comic story. A lot of the people, if you want to read the original, dialogue and all that stuff, just read the books. The books are fantastic, but the comic is a great way of getting someone invested in the character, and I've got no problem with them adapting that a little bit to a more modern tongue to keep people's interest. John Carter's exactly as he should be. He's devoted to Deja Torres to a fault. The second he finds out there's something wrong, he's ready to spring into action, leading fist first, to try and save her. Even though he has no clue where she is, he's still going to fight his whole way to get to her. And that's one of the most appealing things about John Carter. So, so far it's a pretty faithful adaptation of the book. We're finally seeing the Therns introduced, which were introduced in Gods of Mars and not in A Princess of Mars, like we saw in the movie. and hopefully I have a feeling that their depiction in this series is going to be a little bit more closer to the way they were originally presented. So, so far this is solid. I'm glad to have a little bit of dose of authentic John Carter. Our final issue this week is the 6-gun number 20 from Oni Press. This one was on time. We're in part 3 of a town called Penance, and Becky finds herself in the middle of a shootout between the two factions in the town who are trying to regain control of the well. As you remember, all the members of the town are addicted to this water and will die if they do not get it. All the while, Drake Sinclair is right under her feet, being tortured by the Knights of Solomon, who aren't really interested in killing him or obtaining any information. They just want to make him suffer for all the crimes that they believe he has committed against them. This continues to be a solid story. It's also a great comic if you happen to be a fan of strong female protagonists. Becky doesn't fit the mold of your typical cowgirl character. She's not trying hard to prove that she's just as good as the men. She just is who she is, doing her best to deal with a situation that is out of her control. She's burdened with the 6-gun. She, in her own way, is battling its will and trying to gain control over it, all the while trying to do the right thing with its power. It's a solid book. This issue's been out, or this comic has been outstanding from issue 1, and if you're not reading it, you really ought to. Oni's got a winner here, and I don't know how long this comic is going to last, and as far as I'm concerned, if it keeps up this quality, it can last forever, and it'll always have a place on the list. So, 6-gun number 21, it will be out next month. That'll be part 4 of the story, and, you know, I thought this was going to be a climactic issue. Well, I can only imagine what we have coming up next. So, that's going to wrap things up for this week. As always, please leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. You can always head over to cxpulp.com and see the nitty-gritty of the list, see what's coming up for next week, and where we stand on our budget. Next week will be our last video of the month for the month of March, and we will have one more issue to cover, as well as going over the what's going to be on the list in April. So I hope I'll see you again next week, and take care. Thank you.